Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Season 8, Episode 10, the season finale of the Occasional Podcast, joined again by Marc, Phillips, and Scot Hall of the Part-Time Audiophile Network. Yeah. You have reached the Product of the Year Awards. If you want, you can check out all the written stuff we have on Part-Time Audiophile. So if you like to read things rather than hear them, you're probably not here. If you like to hear things and read them, you're probably listening to this right now. And we have went through and picked out some of our best picks for the entire year. And I have Marc and Scot here to kind of elaborate on how that process went. But before we get to that, don't forget to check out episode 9, our 2023 Buyer's Guide, which will give you kind of a more overview of all the good gear from the year. But this particular episode and the Part-Time Audiophile Product of the Year's Awards is about the best of the best of the best of the best of the best.
It's the best.
Is it the best?
It could be.
So, Marc, tell us a little bit about the Product of the Year Awards, how we decide on these things, and how you kind of define Product of the Year for what is picked.
What we come up with Product of the Year, and this is the third year I've done it. We really wanted to look at products that were that the entire staff was able to hear, and so we got in the habit. We did this last year with the Van Alstyne, the DV225 monoblocks. As we passed these around, they were so amazing that we passed them around afterwards, so everybody could hear them. And so this year, we kind of had the same situation happen with a brand known as Amps & Sound. And if you're looking at the website, you're probably seeing a lot of these reviews pop up. And that's because we have at least half of our staff has heard these amplifiers, and they really think that there's something special, amazing. So there's a lot of that saying, okay, you heard this. But now we've realized that we really need to share more information, and that's what we've done this year. So we've come up with a handful of nominees for Product of the Year.
The best product of the year is...
It's, you know what it is for me a lot of times? It's the one that I want to buy. I don't want it to go away. I want to keep it, and I don't want to do it. And I think that so far, my two previous winners have both been where I was really sad to see them go. Didn't want to live without them. If I had had the money, I would have bought them right then and there. And that's an important criteria. And what we had this year was we had a couple of our Product of the Year nominees were actually purchased by the staff members over the year because they fell in love, had to have it. And that, I mean, there is no greater compliment to, a review product than I have to buy this. I don't want to live without this. And we have had a lot of that this year. And that's what you're going to see in the list of nominees.
Today's show is sponsored by Wharfedale. For nearly 90 years, Wharfedale has built loudspeakers for music lovers all over the world. With a warm and natural sound signature, their inherently high-fidelity sonic retrieval simply makes you want to listen to your music for longer. Go to WHARFEDALEUSAdotCOM to discover their limited-time Black Friday offers and the best prices of the year on the high-value Diamond 12 series, the best-selling Linton Heritage, and the no-holds-barred Elysian. That's WHARFEDALEUSA.com. Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is brought to you by ZUAUDIO. Waging a revolution in American hi-fi since 2000. ZU's responsive, highly efficient loudspeakers pack massive tone and shove to bring recorded music to life like never before. And ZU cables bring the same. Check out the Union 6 and Union 6 Supreme and get a first look at the upcoming Definition 6 at ZUAUDIO.com. That's ZUAUDIO.com. Scot Hall, let's kick it over to you. I want to ask you, was there a product you heard this year that just simply put brought you the most joy when you listened to it?
So I've heard a lot of stuff this year, things that have really kind of tickled my fancy and made me want to know more, what made me want to hear more. There's a bunch of speakers that kind of crossed my path, if you will, and things that made me interested. I don't need any more speakers, but there are speakers that made me want, right? There's no, I don't really need components, but there's more components that I have, like many audiophiles, I have issues with compulsive behavior. So I really just need to throttle that stuff back. But, I've heard speakers from Sonor, from QLN, from Rosso Fiorentino this year, which really struck me in ways that I just responded to. And if I wanted little speakers, two-way kind of stand mount speakers, I kind of know the brands I would go to. That said, my speakers, my home speakers, are from Tidal Audio. They're Piano G2. And they were revved. So there's a brand new version, a G3, and it is different than my current one. So I've got a real struggle. Do I try to figure out a way to bring these G3s in or not? And then Tidal's releasing a revved version of my very favorite speaker, the Contriva. And that's going to be way beyond my price point, which is helpful. But both of those speakers, the Piano G3 and the Contriva G3, just some epic level products that don't necessarily cost as much as a new Porsche, right? So that's kind of nice. I like those. Wilson Audio, the new Alexes are really amazing. And I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with some past Wilson designs. I've talked to Daryl about this, right? The old Watt Puppies kind of were one of my first high-end speakers that I kind of was really wowed by. And these new speakers kind of have a lot of that style, but with a whole lot more sophistication. So it's exciting, but that's just speakers, right? And we have a cliff that we can dive off here into other high-end audio products, but maybe we just kind of let Marc have a word. Otherwise, I'll talk all.
Well, Marc. Okay, so Marc is. We'll end with Marc because we know he's just scratching at. Okay. He's scratching. Look, I can see him right now, and guess what? We're not going to let him talk. He's going to go at the end. Hey. I'm just teasing, Marc. Go ahead.
Hey. Okay, so
what? No, just kidding. So mine next. So one of the products that I did want to talk about, and I got a chance to review intently. Okay, so on the speaker front, one of the products that I did get to review this year and listen to was the Von Schweikert Audio Endeavor E3 MK2. For those guys who follow Audiohead and the website, they know that I've done review of some of their bookshelf, smaller footprint speakers before, and I was very much wowed at the resolution and really high fidelity feedback of these things. Now, they're like the $10,000 range, but for $10,000, I feel like you get a huge chunk of the high end of audio coming down into the speaker. So if you're really hungry for that kind of thing, but you don't have really, really big, deep pockets, $10,000's a lot, but you can get a lot of that taste in your mouth for it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was equally impressed. And it's not just the mid-range treble. The bass on these guys, so tight, so wonderful. It gets that like accuracy down there that you just don't see from a lot of other stuff at the price range. Granted, you could try a separate sub and tweak that and get that going. But if you want this just tower standard kind of room-filling sound, I was impressed. Marc?
Scott brought up the Wilson Audio LXVs, and that's one of the nominees this year. We have Mohammed Samji, one of our reviewers, who runs an amazing system, and I really feel like I wanted to involve him for Product of the Year this year. And the two things that he reviewed from us that just changed his mind is the Wilsons and the Dan DiAgostino Momentum S250 MXV power amplifier. They're in the mix. Okay, the next thing we really want to talk about is Tidal Audio's Intra power amplifier, which is a Class D amplifier. But one of the themes that we've had this year with our reviews is that we're really discovering a lot of Class D that is just sensational. And it's you hear people say Class D has come into its own. It's really more than that. And the more I delve into it, the more we kind of realize the directions that are going with Class D, and it's a nice direction to go into. And so we're including the title intro because it really was the one that made us say, wow, this is an amazing amplifier, and you would never know it was Class D.
So we're going to have Marc reveal our big final picks at the end of this episode. But before we get to that, a couple of writers chimed in with their picks of stuff they just really liked, that their top 3 favorites from the year of the stuff they heard. First off, we have Greg Neville, and he says, in no particular order, Vandersteen Model 7X TRM, their 84K, the flagship Vandersteen with improved bass, ? What's not to like? As a longtime Vandersteen fan, this is an accumulation of everything Vandersteen is about. Amazing bass, solid mid-range, imaging, with a great sense of pace and rhythm. Great pick. Now, we've talked extensively about this, but I want to give some details to it. It is the Amps and Sound Bryce monoblocks at 20K. Second pick for him. Only because he didn't hear the Zions on a good system, he says. These have a tube vibe that is super compelling. What they don't have is rolled off tube frequency response. The power would seem diminutive. Why do you get? Why has it got to use a big word? Diminutive. Oh, got it there. Until you hear them play. Then the power reserves sound nearly bottomless. This is an amp to list over if you want that tube vibe. This is echoed in other places on the list as well. I just like to comment on this specifically, that a lot of people seem to feel the amps and tubes reason they're on the list this year is they're able to give you a very appealable sense of tube sensation without overdoing it, which is always that fine line that you kind of tread with these things. The next on the list is the Backer Roomba Extreme for $7,500. This tube preamp can play with the big boys and is a steal under $10K. It is the closest I've heard to live instruments in my listening room. As a purist, this unit is simple and has a limited circuitry to muck up the sonics. The 12 AU7 tubes asked to be rolled with noticeable changes to depth, imaging, and timbre. It's so good, he bought one. Now, moving on to our resident mastering artist, multi-award winning, Grammy award winning Dave McNair. I think that's on his business cards. Just kidding, I don't think it is. Amps and Sound Zion Monos at 26K. Like I said, this thing's appearing twice on the list. Based around a Harman Kardon Citation 5 6162 mock-up. I'm not sure, I have to look that up, but that is what he says. He feels like it's kind of based around that particular amplifier. Everything you love about tubes, but just clean enough not to get tired of it. He kind of expanded on that by saying, if you're tired of the Technicolor, that's the vibe for that slight coloration that you might get from a tube that is really good, but if you overdo it, it's like a fine line, like we said before. Solid state control, just enough tubiness. There we go. Speaker pick for him, VSA Ultra 55s at 100K, a pair. Mid-range is killer, deep bass and punchy, beautiful looking and easy to drive. Sounded great with 12 watts tube amps. Bass module takes some strain off the amp. Really smooth highs. And his last pick, Luminous Audio Axiom 3 preamp at around 8K. Not blingy, physically speaking. Not a physical dazzler, but the audio was. Amp designer Michael Bettinger provides a clean and fast, but never loses its musicality. Super detailed, but never dry. And again, lots of life to the mid-range. Personal audio picks, the headphone section. Always fun for those people who spend a lot of time at home and don't really consider it about the big, huge rooms, room-filling sound. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you want to listen to that at night. All these reasons why there's some really good stuff that came out this year. Grover Neville picked the DCA Expanse at 4K. That is the Dan Clark Audio Expanse. I had a chance to review the closed back version of this, and he's doing really incredible stuff with metamaterial, kind of like Kef. The LS50 is doing stuff with metamaterial, but he's doing it to fine-tune the sound within the speaker cup. An expanse on that idea. The DCA Expanse has got a lot of cool going on, and now open back. The big surprise that he labeled next is from a company out of Chicago called ZMF. The Caldera is their first They've been known for biocellulose drivers. They did a beryllium driver. Well, this one is their first swing at 3.5K for planar magnetic, which has been very popular for very long. He stayed away from it. And, well, he decided to go for it this year. And guess what? Everybody is buzzing about this guy. It's probably one of his standout products, and I believe it to be. I haven't heard it myself outside of a show environment, but Grover has, and this is just one of those things where he's kind of found a nice marriage of a technology that's been a winning for the years, and now he's doing it, and boom, he's got kind of a winner for himself on his hands. And then finally for Grover, once again, Amps and Sounds, Red October at 12K. It's a headphone amplifier. It's expensive, but you know, these type of premium little like DIY custom looking like builds, they really got some good sound. So that's Grover's pick. And myself, I got a chance to review the Audeze LCD5 at 4.5K. They did improvements on not only the sound, but the weight. They moved some of the weight around, so it's not like giant heavy wood cups. A little bit easier on the head and neck for really long listening sessions, but always premium sound, resolution, and a fine sense of balance with the punchy bass that planar magnetics are known for. Awesome. Also, and if you're into luxury things, which I think if you're listening to this show, you probably are, the Estelle & Kern SP3000 DAP. It's the new flagship, the new big guy, 3.7K. It's like holding a little gem in your hand, this thing. But more importantly, the sound is smooth for a full digital source. It kind of expresses that finesse that is often lacking with headphone reproduction in a portable, small space. So the amplifier is powerful and punchy, but not just punchy and detailed, but elegant and effortless from a very tiny, tiny little box, but you're going to pay for it. Those are my picks. Today's episode is also sponsored by SCHIIT Audio. SCHIIT Audio designs and builds audio components in California and Texas. Based in Valencia and Corpus Christi, their wide line of amps, DACs, and audio accessories fit any budget, starting at $49. For a full rundown of all their products, visit SCHIIT.com or stop by their retail store in Old Newhall, just north of Los Angeles. That's SCHIIT.com. Today's episode is sponsored by Von Schweikert Audio. VSA has spent more than 45 years at the forefront of high-end loudspeaker design, engineering state-of-the-art, handcrafted, bespoke heirloom products in the USA. Whether it is the stunning flagship Ultra 11s filling a room, or the small footprint Endeavor E3 MK2, these built-to-order, award-winning speakers are a true representation of what is possible when fidelity breathes life into your music. Von Schweikert Audio allows you to simply enjoy the sound of reality by solving the many challenges of recreating the live event in your sound room. Learn more at VONSCHWEIKERT.com. That's VONSCHWEIKERT.com. Now, Marc been chomping at the bit. Let's wrap it up. Let's hear what you got. I'm super excited. What are the final picks of all the products you heard? And it is very noteworthy here that Marc reviews and listens to a metric ton, probably, of products a year. Is your back okay? Because I know you've been hauling stuff in and out of the house like nonstop.
Oh, my back is always mixed. So depending on the day, it changes from day to day. But do we need a drum roll? Because
well, are we going to go? Before we get to the final pick, do you have any other top performing packages?
Okay, just real quick. This was at the beginning of the year, so it seems like a million years ago. But I did have the Brinkmann Taurus turntable with the Edison Mark II phono stage and the 12.1 arm. It really was the pinnacle of final playback for me. I had never had anything in my home like that before. Love the Brinkmann stuff just because it was simple to use, easy to put together. It was just built like a tank. Just beautiful, gorgeous stuff. So that took me, and I used it with a Koetsu transformer and a Koetsu Urushi black cartridge, and I was just in heaven. That was just probably the most amazing analog rig that I've ever had at my disposal in my home in my life.
Tasty.
Yeah, but expensive, far more expensive than I could afford, but it was incredible. It was an incredible experience.
Drum roll, please. What is the product of the year? Part-Time Audiophile's pick of the year.
It all started many years ago. So, as I mentioned, 2020 product of the year, two-way loudspeaker. In 2021, product of the year, two-way loudspeaker. And I was really nervous about giving it to another two-way loudspeaker just because, it would stop being product of the year and just start being Marc's favorite two-way monitor of the year. And I didn't want to do that, but it just wasn't fair not to include this speaker and pick it as product of the year because I really didn't want to leave. I may circle back and try to get this. Life is difficult without it. It just really just made me happy. And it's a two-way monitor, which is the best thing. It's just a massive 70-pound two-way monitor. But nevertheless, it's just, I could not imagine wanting more. And I've heard big, giant Wampin speakers that cost six figures, and those are great. But this was what I want in my home, in my life. This is what I want to hear on an everyday basis. And that would be the QLN signature monitors. If you don't know QLN, we all love QLN here. Well, Dave McNair owns a couple of pair. I've reviewed 2 pairs now. But this is the flagship. The flagship, Dave has the Prestige 5s, which were the flagship, and that is a multi-driver 3-way tower. And it's really impressive. It's got deep bass, but the QLN signature is a signature monitor. Simply sensational in terms of sounding like a big speaker. It was warm. It was involving. It was just magical. I mean, I just think about it. It was tough for me to write the review because there was so much emotion involved with this. That is my pick, the QLN signature speakers from Sweden. Ta-da.
Because I had a chance to review some of the earlier bookshelves from that company, and these are quite a big bump up in price, though, are they not, Marc? Because originally it kind of landed around $7,000 for some of his Signature 3 models.
The signatures, they start at $24,000 a pair. They move up. I had the burled walnut finish, the gloss, and that was a couple thousand extra. And then there are the dedicated stands, which are very important, and they're an extra $2,000. And they're important is because these things are huge. They're 70 pounds. You just can't place them on any stand. You have to have a decent top plate or whatever. But it's about $26,000 complete for what I reviewed.
Yeah, and I find that surprising because, he did have the bookshelf style studio stand mounts. Then he did a lot of floor standers, and he chose to make the flagship piece back to the studio monitor. But again, I think what you kind of said that I experienced as well in my review is that the studio monitors sound better than some floor standers I've heard. They perform
Absolutely.
like that, but even better, I think, than a lot of times. So, yeah, the stands are super important. That's part of it. But for that footprint and for almost anything, I think he's really onto something good. So
this is Mats Anderson, who is the designer, and he's been doing this since the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people haven't heard about him, but we've done our best to fix that over the last couple of years.
And he's been on the show.
And so the thing about Mats Anderson is that originally the signature monitors, they had a signature monitor before this. It wasn't the flagship of the line, but it was the flagship of the two-way monitors. When they brought it out, he wanted to go further, bring out something that he hadn't done before. And so the old signatures looked a lot like the Prestige ones do now. These signatures do not look anything. I mean, they look, when you're looking at them, it's the same trapezoid, but these are just massive, heavy speakers. You wrap on the cabinet, you can't hear a thing. These are pretty well-designed, well-engineered speakers by any measure.
So there you have it. Part-Time Audiophile Product of the Year. Scott, this is the end of the year. What are we kind of looking at going into 2023 for the site? Anything fun on the horizon?
honestly, we're going to be doing a lot of the same, but better. So we've got plans to be hitting the audio show circuit. Marc and I will be hopping in airplanes and hanging out in hotel lobbies, but we're going to be in Florida, we're going to be in Chicago, we're going to be everywhere this year. We're going to be doing what we can to catch up, chase, get in front of, and then leave behind all of our competition. We've got big plans. So, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do some big names. I'm looking at a long list right now of some real cool audio products that I'm just going to hold on to for right now. I'm just going to roll these out as a surprise. And also a bunch of up-and-comers. I'd like to, this next year, I think we're going to branch out and really get our hands into new product, new directions, and you may actually be seeing more of our made for radio faces, and hopefully that won't scare people off. But I think our big plan for next year is to just turn the volume up.
Well put. Yeah, we're turning the volume up. I like that. The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes PartTimeAudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA Newsletter, and AudioHead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE studio monitors. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.